Welcome to Interviews with Innocence, a podcast about spirituality, consciousness, and exploring the wisdom our children bring into this world. I believe that our very young children are our greatest teachers. After all, they're the masters of living in the present moment, bubbling in unconditional love, enjoying the messiness of life, and curious about the universe in all its dimensions. The pure essence that young children exhibit lives within all of us. My hope is that these interviews will help us discover, embrace, and connect with the sacred core of childhood that resides within each of our hearts. I am your host, Marla Hughes. Before I begin my interview today, I wanted to share with you that I interviewed Nic Whitham the day after Christmas. And at the end of the interview, you'll hear him talking about the magical seance they have on Christmas, where they have a seance and they invite in spirit children who've not been loved on earth while they were here for their short lives, and what happens at that seance and just how magical it really is. And when I was at Banyan Retreat, I experienced a seance very similar. So I ask you to keep an open mind, and maybe one day you'll be able to experience something and come to your own conclusions, because it's so important for all of us to just stay curious always, which I am. So here we go. Today, I am thrilled to have on the show Nic Whitham, Director of Banyan Retreat, a beautiful sanctuary nestled in the heart of Kent in the UK, where healing and other spiritual modalities take place. I had the amazing opportunity to visit Banyan to witness and participate in the amazing offerings it has. Nic grew up in a spiritual family. However, before he began his spiritual healer work, he was executive director and VP at Goldman Sachs. Nic now works full-time as a healer with his partner Steven Sui, directing and offering transformative programs at Banyan. Welcome to the program, Nic.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you for inviting me.
It's
great to be here. I'm so pleased that you invited me. It's nice. Thank you.
Absolutely. How's the weather in the UK right now?
Oh, actually, today's quite pleasant. It's bright and sunny.
Nice.
It's been a miserable week so far. It's been raining and thunder and goodness knows what else. But the sun's been shining today. It's been beautiful.
Nice. That's good to hear. It's pretty nice here too. So why don't you tell us how you began down this spiritual path?
Okay. I was born into a family of healers. My mother was a Reiki healer, and my father was a trance healer. Neither of them practiced that full time. My mother was a teacher, and my father retired from the Merchant Navy a number of years ago and worked locally. So healing was kind of part-time, but an important part of life. And my mother would meet with friends and family and offer healing wherever it was needed. And my father also sat in development circle to develop his trance and to develop his healing. He would sit in circle with one of the good family friends who was also a trance medium who would lead that circle. She would lead on this side of life, and there was a Native American gentleman who led from the spiritual side of life. I had many opportunities over the years to witness many different people from the circle giving healing, in addition to my parents.
Wow.
It was quite an interesting thing, and it wasn't until I was probably around about 7 years old that I actually began to pay much attention to it, or actually question what they were doing. And one day my father suffered with bad back issues, and one day the circle leader came over to give my father some healing, and she was in trance, and she had a Zulu gentleman who worked through her, and he was cupping his hands and blowing through his hands into my father's back. And I remember, as a 7-year-old child thinking, wow, this is strange. Not really understanding what it was, but it kind of piqued my interest in what was taking place. And from that, I guess from that point forward, that's when I became much more interested.
Yeah.
I came from quite a religious family. The rest of the family were very much involved in a different church, a different type of religion that was based on the teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg and also the Bible. So I was with grandparents and with aunts and uncles who had quite senior positions within that church. And my parents didn't push me in any particular direction. Obviously, they had a keen interest in spiritualism and in mediumship. And I was kind of left to my own devices. And I got very much involved in both. I managed to find stuff of great interest in both. And there were many similarities. Of course, Swedenborg was one of the finest mediums he saw, and wrote about his experiences. So there was lots of overlap, and it was hugely interesting.
Right.
But I wasn't heavily involved in either side really until I was about 15 years old, and I would speak regularly through trance to the leader of the circle in the spirit world. And he asked me one day, he said, so what would you like to do with your life? What do you want to experience? What would you like to be? And I said, I very much want the spirit world. I kind of decided at that point in time that there was far more of interest for me in that direction than most others. And he said to me, that's nice. He said, but you need to go out, you need to live your life, you need to experience different things, and there will come a time when it's right for you to become involved in this work.
Interesting.
It was fascinating. And I shortly after that, I moved to London and I started working, and eventually worked in the city and found my way over, well, to most parts of the world. Actually, I worked in most parts of the world, but at that particular time, I was in Hong Kong. My period in Hong Kong was coming to an end, and I had the choice of going to Australia, to the States, or back to the UK. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So next time I came home, I sat down and I had a chat in trance with the circle leader again. And he said to me, it's time to come home, and it's time to start doing your real work now.
Wow. How old were you then?
Oh, that's a good question. Um,
Like, was more like 30 or more like?
no, just over 40, I would imagine.
Interesting. So how did that as a child, and I would like for you to explain when you say talking to someone in a trance in a circle, what that means for the listeners, because some of them aren't familiar with that. But how did that change kind of your life as a child, or did it, like interacting with other kids?
It didn't really. It wasn't something that I spoke about very much. I had lots of interest when I was a child, and I didn't have that many friends. I had a handful of very close friends who were very much aware of what my parents did, about the healing side of things, but there wasn't really much need to discuss it. It was there. I was completely open about it, and it was just a part of life, really.
Right. Did you see, before we get to the trans part, do you remember as a young child seeing anything that just kind of in terms of the healing part of it that
really was sort of mind-blowing for you?
I saw the results. I saw the change in my father after he'd received the healing sessions,
Yeah.
and the remarkable change. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, what an amazing gift to be able
Yeah.
to do that for people.
Interesting.
Um, I worked as a volunteer at the local hospital, and that was mainly caring for the elderly people. And I just remember thinking how wonderful it will be to help those people in that way. And that was really my driver for wanting to work for the spirit world.
Right, right. That's beautiful. So can you explain a little bit what a trans medium is?
Yep, trance mediums. Um, Everybody will be aware of platform mediums who work with clairvoyance, clairaudience, and that's where they raise their vibration to blend with the spirit world and be able to communicate, because the vibration is closer to the spirit world. With trance mediumship, it's way, way, way down the other end of the spectrum, a very passive, a very calm state of mind where you clear your mind, you clear your head, and you allow the spirit world to stand next to you, allow their energies to blend with yours to the point where they can actually take control. They can blend so much that they can suppress your thoughts, they can suppress your control of your body, and they can influence in such a way that they can speak through you, they can move your limbs, they can walk, they can take complete control. But of course, you have to be of a certain frame of mind to allow that to happen.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it takes many years of practice to be able to invite the spirit world to be so close with you that they can actually achieve that.
Wow.
There are lots of misconceptions about trance people. Some people believe that the spirit entities actually enter your body and they have complete control, and that is totally untrue. They stand by your side, their energies blend with yours until you reach a point where they can take control.
Hmm.
But you have to be 100% submissive and prepared for that to happen. Um,
Right.
any any interruption will break that concentration, and you will come back almost immediately.
Right. And that's when the healing will take place many times, is through the trans mediumship.
That was very much the case with my father. My father would go into trance, and they would be able to channel the healing because he was in that frame of mind. The healing energy could be channeled much stronger than ordinarily. But the majority of healers don't need to go into that state. They can clear their mind, they can connect with the universal healing energy, and they can ask for it to be delivered to whoever they're working with.
Yeah.
And they can also ask for it to be sent remotely to somebody as well.
Right. And so I know your work, your energy healing work, because I'm actually taking a class from you. And can you talk a little bit about that sort of healing, the energy, the chakra work?
The hands-on healing, yeah.
Yes.
Most illnesses or most conditions that we develop in the body start within the energy field, within the auric field. And people fortunate enough to have clairvoyant vision can sometimes see that. A very good friend of mine can see the auric field very clearly, and she quite, if I haven't seen her for a little while, she'll say, your colors are a little different today. There's something going on here, or there's something going on
Wow.
there. And she'll be able to see exactly what's happening. And that's because whatever happens within the physical body is reflected in the auric emanation as well. And when we give healing, when we channel healing to the individual, we're actually working on that auric emanation. We're reminding it of the vibration where it should be. And if we have a condition present, then that usually means that there's an interruption to the auric emanation in that particular area of the body. There may be a blockage, there may be a leakage, there may be something else going on. But we actually channel healing to that area that's in need of repair and remind it where it should be resonating. And over a period of time, the body or the auric field will remember that and it will come back to normal.
Wow.
If it doesn't, then things can progress and conditions will actually manifest as a result of the damaged energy field over a prolonged period of time.
Right. Can you give us an example? I know when I was there taking the class, you had some great slides of the man that had some heart disease and congestion. But so could you give us an example of that, and maybe an example when you've had a session, even if it was remotely, with a child that you helped?
Yep. A few years ago, I had a young girl, 6 years. She was 6 years old. She was brought to see me by her parents. Her father had recently taken her to one of the children's hospitals in central London, where she'd been diagnosed with a germ cell tumor. And if you were to look at this young girl, she looked as though she was heavily pregnant with this
Oh my
particular
gosh.
tumor. She wasn't in a very good state of mind at all. And the doctors had suggested that they give her some form of chemotherapy, radiotherapy, to reduce the tumor, and then they would want to operate and remove it. But her parents weren't keen on going down the radiotherapy, chemotherapy route. That for a 6-year-old child could have huge impact on the rest of her life. Being exposed to such dangerous vibrations at such a young age, who knows what would have happened to her. So her parents were very keen to avoid that, and they brought her for a good few months, probably about 3, possibly 4 months, for regular healing sessions. And towards the end, in conjunction with a change to her diet, I advised her parents to do as much as possible to push the diet to an alkaline diet. And after about 3 or 4 months, they went back to the hospital in central London, and the doctors were quite impressed with the progress and the results, and they suggested that they brought her back the following week and they would operate to remove what was left of the tumor, and then suggested a further course of chemotherapy or radiotherapy as a precautionary measure. So her parents decided that they would go ahead with the surgery. They took her back, but they refused any chemotherapy, radiotherapy. And within 2 months of that, she was back at school, bright as a button, and enjoying life too.
Wow.
So that's probably one of the greatest stories that I have that involves children.
Yeah.
There was another young man who was about 9 years old, who lived fairly locally to us here, and he started to have lots of symptoms relating to a very debilitating disease or condition that he had, and it reached a point where he couldn't play football, couldn't even go to school. He was going to school maybe one day a week, because he just didn't have the strength or the energy to continue. And again, his mother brought him regularly for healing treatments here, and within 2 or 3 months, he was able to go back to school full time. And a couple of months after that, he was back playing football, running around.
Wow.
Everything was back to normal for him. So yeah, that was a reasonably short period of time.
Yeah. And when you explain, could you explain a little bit about the actual healing? Because I want to say it's simple if you would sit and watch, but there's so much going on. And also, what if a person knows a child that, like an example of one that you just gave, and they want to find a healer, a reputable, like someone like you, where do you suggest they go if they can't come to Banyan Retreat, especially, in the United States?
That's a bit of a challenge for me, because I'm not too familiar with the healing organisations in the United States. But
Right.
in the UK, that's very easy. That most organisations here in the UK come under the umbrella of the British Alliance of Healing Associations, and you can go to their website and you can find a healer.
Right.
Most spiritualist churches offer healing in some capacity, and most reputable mediums will do that also. But I'm also very much aware that there are some mediums out there that charge huge sums of money for healing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much my view that if you offer healing, no money should be exchanged for healing. But
Right.
the actual process of healing is very, very simple. You have to clear your mind, get your mind as empty as you possibly can, and in a very relaxed frame of mind. And then you ask for the healing energy to be channeled through you. That healing energy, that universal energy, is all around us, and you become a channel for that healing energy, so the energy flows through you. And as it goes to the person that you're working with, it will go to the place where it's needed the most. You don't necessarily need to ask for healing for a specific condition. It will always go to where it's needed the most.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also do that remotely. You can ask that healing to be sent to somebody who's actually not in front of you. I have a little way of doing that, where I picture that person in a pyramid, and I picture the healing energy flowing to them. And in my mind, that healing energy is the many, many different colors of the spectrum. And those colors are just swirling around that person, and they will take the vibration or the color that they need at that time. Now, that's just my way of doing it. There are many, many different ways of doing
Mm-hmm.
it. But always, when you picture that person, I always say you should picture them in full health.
Right.
Regardless of what condition they're in at the moment, always picture them in good health, because that's what you're sending to them. You're sending them good health.
Yeah.
If you picture them lying in a bed, very sick, then you can actually be projecting more of that towards them. But I don't want to focus on that too much, because healing is very much about intent. It's the intent of the individual. And the stronger or greater the intent, the greater the healing will be.
Right. When I hear you talk, I think of physicality, physical healing. So let's talk a little bit about, number one, healing the heart, and also a little bit about just energetically sending love to another, or to a very young, since this is about children, to a very young child, even when they're a toddler. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, for the intention to work with regard to healing, it has to stem from love. So by default, love is automatically embedded in all that you do in a healing capacity.
Yes.
You radiate that love. Children are very, very receptive to healing, and to all types of emotion. They're very sensitive, far more sensitive than we are as adults, because we learn to shield ourselves and protect ourselves from that.
Right.
But children are not. The children, they see the spirit world. They're very much in tune with their own feelings. And when you send a child healing, it's really no different from an adult, but they will probably have a greater feeling or greater awareness of that love as they receive it.
Right.
And again, it doesn't have to be local. You can do that remotely as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yes, I think because their vibrations are so high, because they're still so close to the source. As Wayne Dyer says, still having droplets of heaven clinging to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're still very much connected through the auric field to their
Yes.
mother.
Yes.
They won't break away from that until they go through puberty and beyond. But up until that point, they're very much connected to their mother.
Interesting. Can you expand on that a little bit? And what if they're being raised by a caretaker or someone other than?
There was an interesting study done a good number of years ago, and they were looking at genetic conditions that come down through the generations, and they found something that's very, very strange with children that were adopted, because over the years, those children actually became susceptible to conditions that were quite prevalent in their adoptive families' genes. Now, whether that's because there's a bonding or a realignment to the new motherly figure
Right.
at a younger age or not, I don't know. I can't answer that. And I can only tell you from what I've been told by the spirit world that children have that connection with the auric, through the auric field, that energetic bond with the mother up until the age of puberty. Once they go beyond that, they break away and form their own.
Right.
I think it's happening. It's happening at a younger age too, but that's the point where they actually break away
Right.
and no longer, and that's why they can rebel and be troublesome teenagers for a little while.
Right. So what you're saying, they with the study, they could develop some of the genetics of the adoptive parents. Therefore, what I hear you saying is that really the energy or the auric field surrounds and is connected to those people who really love them most, or who are
Yes,
really taking care of them.
yes, I think that's pretty much what it's.
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, how do you think that, as a healer, how do you think we can help the very young trust their their intuition and their inner strength, so that they'll be able to carry that on throughout life to navigate life a little bit better?
I think that's a difficult one, because it really very much depends on the understanding of the family members around each child. For lots of people, those feelings, those the ability to see, the ability to remain sensitive, is suppressed by mainly by the parents. The children are told not to disregard it, or they're imagining it, so that the child begins to think, well, I must be imagining it because that's what I'm being told. And therefore those experiences diminish. It's no longer, they're no longer able to see and to feel and to sense in quite a strong way. So I think if the parents are open to that and they encourage that to take place. If a child's playing and they're playing with their spirit friends, encourage them to talk about it, encourage them to share their experiences
Right.
for that particular time that they've been in the presence of their spirit friends.
Yeah, that's what we've talked a lot with a lot of people I've interviewed, just opening up the conversation and validating and loving and really being curious. And many times I think it brings about memories. It helps us remember when we were a child and maybe had some of the same experiences.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and most of all to be supportive and to encourage that
Yeah,
in whatever way we can.
right. So let's segue for a second. We have to wrap it up here soon, but I know, we're getting close to Christmas, and I know you just had a seance for Christmas. So can you tell our listeners, who some have never, the word seance is probably a bit, scary for them, but I know I've been there. It's absolutely beautiful and amazing and real. And tell us a little bit about what happened last night and in the past with the Christmas seance and the spirit and children in spirit.
You're absolutely right. It strikes fear into the hearts of many, and it shouldn't. It's the most beautiful, most wonderful experience if you're with the right medium. And the Christmas seances are very, very special because it's a time when the spirit world invites the children, and they're always children that did not experience happy times at Christmas. Now, each of the sitters that comes to the Christmas tree seances, we ask to bring a child's toy with them. We wrap those toys and we put them under the Christmas tree. Last night we had this enormous white cardboard house that came with some pens, and you could color the house with the
Uh-huh.
pen. I don't think they had quite enough time to do that last night, but they certainly played with it and moved it around. And typically what happens is in seance the medium has to be a physical medium, and that's very different from a healer and a clairvoyant or clairaudient medium. They have the ability to produce ectoplasm, and the spirit world are able to step into that ectoplasm and cloak their bodies with ectoplasm and be as real as they were when they lived in the physical world. The only thing is they have to remember how they were. So they have to remember that they had legs, they have to remember they had arms. And I once remember experiencing in a seance what the materialized form of the control came around, put his hand in front of me. He said, "Now watch my hand carefully." He said, "Because I'm now going to remember the hairs on my hand." And as I watched, the hairs appeared on this hand that was in front of
Wow.
me. So they have to, it's a challenge one. They have to remember, but children don't have fears, so it's much easier for them. There can be 7 or 8 at each time coming through, and they rip the paper off the presents, they unwrap them, you hear them going around the room. We have a young lad who comes regularly who asks us to bring a pair of roller boots. And whenever he comes, you hear him in the roller boots going around the room. This year he asked for skipping ropes, and last night he had his skipping ropes. He didn't quite manage the skipping ropes, but they were there, and I'm sure over time he'll persevere. So
Wow.
they tend to bring them through in different age groups. So there'll be sort of the younger ones, the 1 to 5 years old, and then the 5 to 10 years old, and then those that are slightly older. And they tend to come in groups. But it's wonderful to be able to experience that. And the scientists in the spirit world, they take etheric copies of the gifts that have been given, so that they can take them back to the spirit world and play with them.
Uh,
Now, because those gifts have been touched by the spirit, they have a wonderful healing energy around them, and we like to make use of that. So we take them to the local children's hospice called Demelza House, and it's for terminally ill children. And we hope that the healing associated with each of those gifts helps them in some way on their, throughout their challenges and their difficulties.
Wow, that just must be magical.
It's very special.
Ah,
Christmas is the Christmas seances are the best ones of the year.
yeah, I
They're
definitely
really,
want to
really
try to
great.
come. Definitely want to try to come next year. Well, Nic, thank you so much for being on the show today. Is there anything that you would like to say that I didn't ask?
I don't think so. I think we covered a fair bit there.
Great. Well, I'd love for you to come back and talk a little bit more about Banyan, about physical mediumship. Scott Milligan is the physical medium you work with, and you're a team, and he's amazing. And if people want to find you, how could they find you?
The best way is via the website, banyanretreat.com, or alternatively, we are on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Banyan Retreat, and we also have an events group, Banyan Retreat Events.
Right. Wonderful.
Either of those ways is a great way to contact us.
Okay. And that will also be in the show notes for the listeners. And Banyan Retreat does, you can go there. I mean, this is not just for you can go and sit in circle and these seances, and I can't wait to come out and visit you again. I'm looking forward to that. So thank you so much for coming today, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Excellent. Thank you for inviting me.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening in today. If you want to learn more about the show, you can find us at interviewswithinnocence.com and on Facebook or Instagram at Interviews with Innocence. Please write me a message, tell me what you liked, and let me know what else you would like to hear. I would love to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating and review. It helps other listeners find the show. Thank you.